Welcome to another immigration art video. My name is Art Serratelli and I'm the partner. If you have any questions, give us a call. You have a question, we'll have an answer. The topic of today's video is the often confusing distinction between something called the EB-5 investor visa and something called the E2 treaty investor visa. In the infinite wisdom of our federal government, we have named two entirely different things with very similar words and numbers. On the one hand, we have an EB-5 investor visa. That's a green card. That's a green card. And on the other hand, we have an E2 treaty investor visa, which is a temporary work category. They sound an awful lot alike, don't they? They both have the words investor and visa in the title. They both start with the letter E, and they both have a number in the title. EB-5, E2. Well, I want you to know the difference between an EB-5 investor visa green card and an E2 treaty investor temporary work visa, and I want to share my opinion about why the E2 is far superior and why the EB-5 is a can of worms that's offered to the general public as some magic bullet, a magic cure-all. Do you want a green card? Just give us $1 million or $500,000 and all your problems will be solved, right? Wrong. Now, after you hear what I have to say, if you still want to do an EB-5 investor visa green card, feel free. But it's my obligation to you to give you the truth, to tell you what's really going on, to point out the risks, to point out the benefits of both, and then you decide. You decide. Knowledge is power. As a quick summary, an EB-5 investor visa is simply a category of green card that requires one, either an investment of $1 million into a business located anywhere in America, or an investment of $500,000 in a business located in either a rural area or an urban area, areas where there are very few businesses, a very low level of economic activity. And the goal would be to let you invest less money to increase an economically depressed area. Point number one is a requirement of a capital investment that may or may not be realistic in terms of the actual capital needed for the particular business. It's an arbitrary, in my opinion, exceedingly high level of capital investment to get a green card. Point number two, the EB-5 requires either an active investment on your part, meaning you buy a business or you create a business from scratch. You invest $1 million or $500,000 of your own money in your own business, and you create 10 new American jobs. Or if you buy an existing business, you preserve, save 10 existing American jobs that would be lost if the business you're purchasing shut its doors. The second way of investing is passive. is passive. The federal government has set up regional investment centers. They go by various different names, but what they actually are, they are private companies that are formed and are vetted, in theory, vetted by the federal government. And these private companies are economic development organizations. Probably most of them are in real estate development, and most of them are run by a general contractor who creates projects that are funded not by banks, not by independent lending institutions. They're funded by you. You take your $1 million or $500,000, hand it to some organization that you better do your homework on. You better research the success track record of each of these regional investment centers. Because they're blessed by the federal government, in my opinion, doesn't mean very much. And if you turn over your investment to have it in turn create jobs and be invested in projects, and you're passive, that qualifies you for the EB-5 green card. But then that raises point number 3. Fraud. Point number 3. Fraud. You've got to do your homework. Next, I will show you a screenshot from my Facebook page about a note describing a Wall Street Journal article that lays out in a horrifyingly real way the examples of fraud that is pervasive in some of the regional investment organizations that have been vetted by the federal government. I will point this out because you really have to know that your investment could go right down the drain, and your green card can go right down the drain with it. So take a look. Point number 4, return on investment. Assuming there is no fraud in the organization in which you choose to be a passive investor, then we've got to look at return on investment. If you invest money in an EB-5 green card, you're gonna have to hire, and this is if it's passive or if you start your own business or buy an existing business. You're gonna need to go through the immigration process, and these costs that I'm going to tell you about next, they need to be factored in to the return on investment calculation. You're going to have to pay commercial lawyers. You're going to have to pay immigration lawyers. You're going to have to pay, if there is a general contractor in a passive investment situation, you're going to have to pay a management fee to the general contractor who runs the regional investment, the regional development center. You're going to have to, are you ready? Are you ready? You're going to have to hire an economist to prove in economic terms as defined by our immigration service. What? The Immigration Service is defining economic terms? And, by the way, is economic analysis really necessary to prove that you're going to create or save 10 jobs? Really? The reason I'm so skeptical is because of the cost. On average, and do some research on the internet, on average, the economist is going to charge you $20,000 to $25,000, maybe $30,000 to do his report. The immigration lawyer will also probably charge around $30,000 to do the immigration work. The commercial lawyer might charge $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to do the commercial paperwork required to satisfy the government, the federal government. And if it's a passive investment, the management fee from the regional investment center could be several percentage points. It could be 5%, heaven forbid 10%. 5% of $1,000,000 is a lot of money. You need to ask yourself, and you need to ask in a passive investment situation, the project manager, what historically is the return on investment for the type of project you're putting money into, $1 million or $500,000. In other words, do you expect to get not only your principal back, but do you also want a return on your investment? 5%, 10%, 2%. Be careful. Some investments don't even give you your principal capital investment back. And our last point, point number 5 about the EB-5 green card is the fact that you do, right? You get a green card, right? You're turning over all this money. You get a real green card forever, right? Wrong, 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 wrong. You only get a 2-year conditional green card. For $1 million or $500,000, our government just gives you a 2-year pass to stay around to see if the investment performs as described in the original EB-5 application? Really? Then what? Well, to get the real green card, the one that's good for 10 years and is renewable forever, to get that, you need to reapply. After 2 years, you need to pay the economist, you need to pay the immigration lawyer, you need to pay the corporate lawyer, probably an accountant, and if it's a passive investment, you've got to pay those management fees. You've got to pay all over again, and maybe you'll get the 10-year green card, or maybe you won't. Oh well, that to me is an unacceptable level of risk. For $1 million, you should be guaranteed a lot more than just a maybe. Maybe we'll give you your 10-year green card. Maybe? Maybe? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Okay, now that I've given you my perhaps overly harsh opinion on the EB-5 green card, don't do it. Don't do it. What's the alternative? And the answer is 2 very good non-immigrant work visa categories. If you look on the Immigration Art video channel here on YouTube, you'll see that I've got an E1, E2 treaty trader, treaty investor video that explains how you can open your own business with the amount of capital that's normally required for the type of company you're forming in the industry in which the company will exist. There's no million, there's no $500,000 arbitrary rip-off number, in my opinion. In the alternative, there is something called the L1A and the L1B, intra-company transferee visas. Those are also temporary work categories. The reason I point these out is because the word treaty in the E1, E2 treaty context, if your country doesn't have a treaty with the United States, then you cannot participate in the E1, E2 temporary visa work program. Turkey has a treaty with the United States. But say you're from China, mainland China, or India. Those 2 countries do not have an treaty with the United States. So folks from mainland China or India, you would do the L1A and the L1B. As a final point of comparison, let's take the legal fees for immigration, the immigration lawyer, as one example. In the EB-5 green card category, an immigration lawyer could charge around $30,000. In the temporary, non-immigrant work categories for the E or the L, we charge $3,000. 10 times less. 10 times less. Why would an immigration lawyer charge you $30,000 for an EB-5 green card when you can do virtually the same thing with less of a capital investment and more control over your investment and your own business and your life? Why would they charge you 10 times more for something that apparently doesn't seem to be 10 times better? In my opinion, it's worse. It's 10 times worse. And the answer is they charge you 10 times more because they can. If you have $1 million, what the heck's another 30,000? If you have $500,000, what the heck is another 30,000? That kind of thinking, in my opinion, is wrong. It exploits people who try to do the right thing. It exploits the people who we can and should not exploit the most. I don't like it.